In this video, we are going to see how to create a MySQL instance in Amazon Web Service and how to access that instance from outside of Amazon Web Service Cloud using any MySQL clients. First, log into Amazon Web Service. So it's logged in, and click the services and search for RDS, Relational Database Services. Okay, so and click the get started now. So I'm going with the free tier eligible and click this and select MySQL and click the select button and instance specifications. So DB engine MySQL and license model. So go with default values and DB engine version MySQL 5.6.3. so even we have a latest versions also, so I'll go with the default selected values and DB instance class db.d2.micro. Since I have selected free tier eligible, so it is showing only a one instance class, and I'm going with only default instance class only, and storage type general purpose, and allocated storage is 5 GB. If you want to go with, you can go with till up to 20 GB also. This is a free tier eligible, and if you go with beyond 20 GB then you will be charged. So I'll go with 5 GB only. And DB instance identifier, so we have to provide an identifier to your MySQL DB instance. Okay, just I'll give my DB. Okay, my DB instance or otherwise my SQL test. Okay, and the username is user2 and password, just give the password and confirm password and click the next step. Okay, so it is asking network and security details. So VPC, is a virtual private cloud that exists inside your Amazon web service cloud. So actually this is a virtual cloud. So if you want to go with your own VPC, then select create a new VPC, or otherwise if you want to go with default VPC, then select this option and subnet group default. So why? Because I'm going with all default values only. I'm not going to create a new VPC and I'm not going to a new subnet groups. And publicly accessible, yes, and click select this yes, and availability zone, then go with no preferences and VPC security group and select default VPC. So database name, is for example online shopping. Okay, so database port 3306. This is a default port number in MySQL database, and DB parameter group and default.mysql 5.6. just go with all default values, since you are not going to create this MySQL instance for your any business purposes, since we are going to we are learning how to create a instance. Just go with all default values. So copy tags to snapshots. So don't if you want to go select checkbox, then that is up to you. And enabled encryption, so go with the default values. And this is the backup retention period by default is a 7 days, so I'm not going to provide any retention period, so just go with 0. Okay, and enable enhanced monitoring, no, and auto minor version upgrade, yes. If you want to go with no, then select the no. Okay, so launch a DB instance and view DB instance. So it is creating, and refresh this and creating. So it may take a couple of minutes to this MySQL instance up. Meanwhile, we'll set up a environment to access your MySQL instance that is running in AWS cloud. So I'm using the Eclipse, and inside Eclipse I'm going to use data source explorer to connect to my SQL instance that is running in a Amazon web service. So click data source explorer and right click on a database connection and click new. And since I'm going to invoke the MySQL instance, I have to provide the connection profile types MySQL. So select, double click, and it is asking what is the database name and what is the URL and username, password. So we have to provide all these details, and we can click the finish, and it will provide the one connection objects to you which can be used to do the operation in your MySQL instance. Okay, so go back to your instance and refresh. So still it is creating. Okay, so again go back to your MyEclipse, and so we have to provide this database, and since this is taking some default values like JDBC colon MySQL, it is common. So here we have to provide our URL, and username is user2, and the password, let me give the password whatever I have entered while creating a MySQL instance, and this database. So this is optional, this is the, you don't need to provide any values here. So once this database is up, and we have to provide those URL information here and database name as well. So we are waiting for this MySQL instance to be up. Once that is up, we can provide all these details here, and we can test the connection. Go back to your AWS, and yes, it is available. Just refresh. So it is available. Okay, then click this and click this button. So here it is showing all these details of about your MySQL instance. So this is the endpoint, this is the port number, and if you look at your database name, this is your database name, online shopping. Okay, so just copy this database name and go back to your Eclipse and paste here, and we have to provide URL also, mean endpoint. So endpoint, we can copy this endpoint and paste here. Okay, so we have provided all these required details to establish the connection to your MySQL instance that is running in Amazon web service. Then click the test connection. So ping success and click the finish. So it is provided one connection objects to you. Okay, so sometimes we may face some issues while trying to connect to your MySQL instance outside of your Amazon web service. So because of since we have I'm allowing to the public to access MySQL instance, so I have to give the permissions to the public to access my instance. So sometimes they cannot access my instance. So what we have to do, since I have selected default VPC and default subnet groups, so just go back to your security groups, or otherwise select EC2 and click the security groups. So security groups, here it is showing default VPC security group, and click this and click the inbound and click edit. Okay, so here MySQL by default, so it will display only, I think, all TCP custom TCP rules. What we have to select, we have to select MySQL or Aurora database, and protocol TCP TCP and port range is 3306, and so here source we have to select anywhere and click the save. If you do this configuration only, and public, I mean outside of the people of your Amazon Web Service can access your MySQL instance, otherwise they cannot get the connection object. Okay, so this is a configuration that you have to done before giving your access to your I mean to your people who are working outside of your Amazon Web Services cloud, I mean MySQL clients. So click this and go back to your RDS instance. Oh my god, so I click the RDS, then click the instances. Okay, so click this and here, so these are all the details about your instance, and your MySQL instance is available. So outside of your I mean Amazon Web Services cloud services, we can access this instance, means we can do the any operation on your database. So just go back to your Eclipse, and what you will do is we'll create a one script file, open SQL scrapbook. So just select MySQL 5.1 and name is new MySQL, and your database is online shopping. Now what we'll do is we'll get the current date from your MySQL instance. Select current date, okay, and select and execute this command. So it is executing. Yes, okay, so current date is this is the current date. So we are able to connect to your MySQL instance which is running in Amazon Web Services successfully. So now in next video what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Lambda function and use runtime as a Java. With the help of the Java, I'm going to do the CRUD operations in your MySQL instance. Thank you and thanks for watching this video. Make sure our MySQL instance is up and running. A status is available and we can able to perform the operation on MySQL, I mean AWS MySQL database. So this is the endpoint, and the database name is online shopping and username is user2. So actually I'm using the Eclipse to connect to Amazon Web Service, I mean AWS MySQL database. So I have already connected. So this is a connection objects to connect to MySQL database which is running in a AWS. So I have already created one table in online shopping database. It has a two columns, employee ID and employee name, and I'm trying to fetch data which is already available in the employee table. So if you click the results, it is showing nothing since there is no data is available. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll create a Lambda function. Just go back to your AWS and Lambda management and create a Lambda function. Okay, and blank function, click the next, and so you have to provide the name of your function and the description and the runtime as a Java. Here Lambda function code. Okay, we are going to write a code in a Java, so we have to provide the code entry type. Okay, what is the entry type? Whether we can provide the zip type or a jar type. So first we have to create a project in a Java and export that project as a jar. So those jar we have to upload here. This is the upload option. Next, Lambda function handler and the role. So we have to provide what is a function handler and what is the role. We have to provide those information. Handler. So handler means what is actually a Java class, and inside that class which method has to execute. So those information we have to provide in handler section, like package name dot and class name. Inside the class name, what is the method that has to execute and the role. Okay, so we have to create a new role. This actually new role is for giving the permissions to a public to access a VPC. Okay, VPC, virtual private cloud. Inside the VPC only our MySQL instance is running. So we have to create a role. So in that role we are providing a access to public. Okay, first we will create a role and later we'll create a project, Java project, and export that project as a jar file. Now we will see how to create a IAM roles. So roles and create a new role. Okay, AWS Lambda, select this and search for okay, I think it is showing nothing. Okay, again what we will do is we will click IAM roles. So create a new role and AWS Lambda, select and search for AWS Lambda. I think it is not showing no records found. I don't know what's happening actually. Okay, so I have refreshed again. So we have to search for AWS Lambda VPC access execution role. Select this and click the next step. So we have to provide the role name, MySQL test, create a role. So role has been created, MySQL test. Okay, click this role and we have to attach a policy. Okay, so what is the policy? Policy is providing the information like whether we can have a read-only access or write-only access, and since most so more instances are running in your VPC, so we can provide the what is the endpoint. We can have access to a particular endpoint, or we can have access to all the endpoints. Endpoints is nothing but MySQL instances. Okay, use the existing policy. Okay, so no filters, like use a custom managed, or otherwise if you want to go with no policies, so Amazon RDS full access, select this and attach a policy. Okay, policies has been attached. So role has been completed. Now what is our next step is we have to create a Java project and export that Java project as a jar file. We have to upload those jar here. Okay, now go back to Eclipse. So this is already Java file that I have already created. So it has a two packages. One is com AWS Lambda online and online data. Let me open this MySQL test. Okay, MySQL test implements a request handler. Okay, what is this request handler? Request handler is actually an interface that is provided by Amazon. Okay, let me open the text. So as I told, we can create a handler in three ways. One is creating a custom method handler, means create your own defined classes. Okay, and provide those information in a handler information, package name dot class name, and which method we have to invoke. So provide that information also. And if you are going with Amazon provided interfaces, your class implements a request handler, so you have to provide package name dot class name only. You no need to provide the method name. Why? Because this AWS already aware of which method has to invoke. Okay, this same case is applicable to this scenario also. This way also, requesting stream handler interface that is implemented by your own class. So in this video I'm going to provide the explanation about how to create a class and that implements a request handler. That is, a request handler is an interface that is provided by AWS. Okay, so first what we have to do is we have to create a Maven project and create a handler classes. So I have already created a Maven project, AWS Lambda Java as a runtime, and MySQL test is a handler class. So as I told, MySQL test implements a request handler. So it has a two generic arguments, request details and the response details. Request details holds the input details and the response details thrown the response. I mean, what are the information that you have to give it to users. Those informations holds by this response details. So let me open this request details and the response details. Request details, I'm going to user is going to give only employee ID and employee name, and the response details message ID and the message reason. So it contains like message ID is like if you are able to successfully update, I mean insert the data in the database, it will give the 1, and message reason is successfully updated. If any failure scenarios, message ID is 999 and message reason is unable to process your request and followed by exception message. So those information I have already written here. So if any exception is raised, I am setting a message ID as 999 and message reason as unable to register and followed by SQL exception. Okay. So if you are successfully able to update, I mean insert the data, it is written in response code. If that is a 1 and return the response code and message reason is successfully updated the details. So this is the actually the query, and this is the connection details. So URL is we have to provide the MySQL instance endpoint and the username and then password. So this is all about like my handlers. Okay, so what is the default method handler? Method name is a handle request. You no need to specify this method name in a handler section itself. You have to provide only a package name and handler name. That's it. You no need to specify this method name itself. Okay, then go back to text. So implement code to connect to SQL, MySQL is completed, and we have to add the 3 dependencies. One is Amazon, AWS Lambda Java core. This is for, this dependency is provided this request handler and request stream handler interfaces, and the MySQL connector Java is for establishing a connection to MySQL instance, and the Maven shared plugins, some Maven related plugins. So those dependencies I have already added in a pom.xml. So Amazon, AWS Lambda Java core and MySQL connector Java and Maven shared plugins. Now what we'll do is we'll build our Maven project, and we have to provide some information on goal section. That is nothing but package space shared colon shared. Okay, so right click and run as Maven build. Okay, and paste this, click the run, and just simply click the save. Okay, so it is trying to build your Maven project. So successfully build a Maven projects. Now what we'll do is we'll search for a jar. Okay, so right click on the project, show in System Explorer. Okay, and expand this and expand target. Okay, so the jar has been created. Now 1034, it is also a 1034. Now only the jar has been created. Now what we'll do is we'll export this jar in a Lambda function. Okay, go back to Lambda function now. Okay, so click the Lambda, create a Lambda function and blank function, click the next. Okay, my function name is my Lambda SQL Java. Okay, so my Lambda MySQL Java description performing MySQL operation. Okay, so runtime we have to select Java 8 and we have to upload the jar. Okay, click this jar and open and come to handler. So what information we have to provide? As I told, we are using the AWS provided interfaces, so we have to provide the handler information like this: package name dot class name. You don't need to provide method name. So what is the default method that will executed by your AWS is handle request. Okay, so what is the package name? copy the package name and paste here, and followed by class name. What is the class name? MySQL test. Okay, and role, choose an existing role. Okay, and existing role is MySQL test. So this is what we have created earlier, MySQL test. Okay, click the next and create a function. So still it is creating. So it is successfully created. Now what we will do is, so it is showing that your Lambda function MySQL test has been successfully created. You can now click on the test button to input a test event. So we have to provide test input information. Okay, configure test input. So what is this test input? Test input is actually a JSON objects that we have to provide the information in the JSON format objects. So just go back to your Eclipse and look at the handle request. It is expecting two parameters. One is the request details and the context. So forget about this context. So we have to provide the input details in request object details. What this request object details having? Employee ID and the employee name. So we have to provide those information in a JSON object. Okay, employee ID is 101A. Okay, and another object, parameter is employee name. Okay, so employee name is, for example, Ashok. Okay, now we will remove another attribute. Okay, now come down and save and test. So message ID is 1, message reason successfully updated details. So first we look at whether these details has been updated in database or not. Okay, then select this command and execute. Yes, if you click the results, employee ID is 101 and employee name is Ashok. Again we will try to insert one more data. So go back to your test event and change it to 102A and employee name is provide Anil. Okay, then come down, save and test. Okay, now we are getting message ID is 1, successfully updated details. Again verify. Relax. Okay, click the results, 102A Anil. So we can able to update the details in MySQL instance using Lambda function and with Java as a runtime. So this is how you have to create a Lambda function, and we have to export the jar file of your Java project, Maven project, and you have to establish the connections to your MySQL instance. So, and thanks for watching this video. Thank you. And how to create a resources and how to create a method inside that resources, and how to integrate this Amazon API Gateway with Lambda function, and finally how to call this API Gateway from Postman tool. So Postman is actually a REST client. First we will make sure our Lambda functions are working fine. So these are the Lambda functions that I have already created. I'm going to use MySQL test Lambda function. Okay, so this Lambda function actually it will insert the data in a MySQL database. So what are those MySQL database details? Open the Eclipse. So database name is online shopping. So insert the database. I have a one employee table. So in this employee table I am having two columns, employee ID and employee name. So currently we don't have any data in employee table. Now what we'll do is we will try to insert some data from Lambda function. Okay, so click on the actions and configure test event. So we have to persist employee ID and employee name in a employee table. So we have to provide these details, employee ID and employee name, and close this and click the test. Okay, so we are getting the success message ID 1 and message reason successfully updated details. So this is actually inserted the details, so mistakenly I have given this name. Okay, now so it is showing the successfully updated details. Okay, then go back to your Eclipse and fetch the details. Okay, so click the results. So 102A and Anil. So these details we have provided in Lambda function, and this Lambda function insert those details in a employee table. So our Lambda functions are working perfect. Then go back to Lambda function. Okay, now what we will do is we will create a API, and after create that API we will integrate that API with Lambda function. First we will create a API. We have to click this create API. Okay, it is asking API name. My for example online shop. Description perform shopping. Okay, click the create API. Okay, so API has been created. Now we have to create a resource and click the create resource. We have to provide the resource name, my online shopping. Okay, create a resource. So resource also has been created. Now we have to create a method. Click the create method. So we have to, since I am inserting the data into MySQL database, I will select put and click this. So finally it is asking the integration type. So you are integrating your Amazon API Gateway with what? So with Lambda function or HTTP or MARC or AWS services. So I am going to explain this means how to integrate this Amazon API Gateway with Lambda function. So it is by default it is selected Lambda function only. Now we have to provide the we have to select the region. Okay, so your Lambda functions are running in a US East 2 region. Okay, so then select that region US East 2 and it will ask the Lambda function. So what is a Lambda function? We have to integrate with the API Gateway. Then select this MySQL test. Okay, click the save, click OK. Okay, so it is successfully integrated. Now we will test Amazon API Gateway by passing some details, employee ID and employee name. Okay, so call the use the same JSON object, copy this JSON object and paste here. Okay, then change this value to 102A and change the employee name also Ashok, and finally click the test. Okay, so message ID and message reason is successfully updated. So we can successfully updated the inserted the details in a MySQL instance. Okay, our integration also working perfect. So we will verify. Okay, so 102A Ashok. Okay, these details also successfully persisted. Okay, our Lambda functions are working fine and our API gateway also our API gateway is also working fine. Now our final task is we have to call the API gateway from Postman. How to call those? Okay, so this is the one way of integrating your API gateway with the Lambda function, and another way is go back to your Lambda function and click the triggers and add the triggers. So this is a Lambda function. Okay, so this side we have to provide the API gateway. Okay, so API gate name online shop. So deployment stage, prod, security, open. So currently I am providing the open only. Okay, if you select submit, I will get some error. Why? Because this integration already completed. Okay, whether you can go with that approach, or you can go with this add trigger approach. Both approaches will work. Okay, now go back to your API gateway. Now what we'll do is I will deploy my API gateway. So what is my API gateway is online shop. Select this and actions, deploy API. So deployment stage, new stage, and stage name online shop. Okay, click the deploy. Okay, successfully deployed. Now what we'll do is, our final task is we have to invoke this API gateway from Postman. Now we will see how to call this API gateway from the Postman. Click the export and select this Postman JSON. Okay, we have downloaded some JSON file. Okay, click this, show in folder. So my online shop swagger postman.json. Okay, open your Postman and click the import and import a file. Choose a file. Okay, so what file we have downloaded now? Okay, this is the online. Okay, online shop swagger postman. Click the open. Okay, so collection online imported. Close this and click the collection and online shop. Expand this. Okay, online shopping and click this. Okay, now this is the actually Amazon API gateway URI. Then we have to provide some information in the body. So what is that information? This is JSON objects. That JSON objects contain employee ID and the employee name. We'll copy the direct JSON objects from Lambda function event, test event. Paste here and change it to JSON 103 A, and employee name is, for example, Amar. Then finally click the send. Okay, so we are getting message ID 1 and message reason successfully updated details. We'll cross verify whether these details has been successfully inserted in MySQL database or not. Select this command and execute. Click the result. So 103A Amar. Okay, so from Postman itself we can successfully insert the details in a MySQL database. Okay, from Postman we are calling the Amazon API gateway, and this Amazon API gateway internally calls the Lambda function, and this Lambda function will insert the details in a MySQL database. If you want to know how to how I have created this Lambda function, you can we can check those details in my part 2 video. Thank you and thanks for watching this video.